For me, it's just being organized and methodical and implementing systems. I need to do a better job of that. So that's something I'm going to focus on in the coming weeks.
Okay.
Once I get back to Roswell. I'm a very, I like systems. I like to kind of do things the same way all the time and then just tweak as I need to. And I haven't been doing that. So like I have lots of database ads and I haven't put them into my database yet and things like that. So just being more, I guess, organized.
Okay. So we're really just talking about taking your active clients or your active prospects and making sure nothing slips through the cracks. Is that right?
Yeah, and then just starting, you know, being more organized and methodical about outreach and nurturing and smart plans and all of that.
Okay. So where are you now, Donna?
What do you mean?
Are you're at your daughter's house?
Yeah, I'm in New Orleans on base. They're in the process of moving, so I'm babysitting while they move.
Okay, so that's the new house or the old house?
I'm at the old house. That's why it's in such a state of disarray.
Okay, well, I wasn't commenting on that. So they're
Definitely
moving,
is.
and when do you come back to Atlanta?
Well, I have this open house on Sunday, and I have to do some showings on Saturday. So Friday, I need to be back on Friday.
Okay, cool. So do you make a list of the things that you've got to do? Like, do you make a list that says, hey, put this person, call this person Sunday? Like, how are you guys handling like the day-to-day calendaring?
I've just started to use my calendar, and it's helping because it's helping me get organized. And also, I have the GPS is not sitting in front of me, and this is like literally the first day it hasn't been. But since I did that 411, I'm literally staying. I have it categorized week 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm checking off the things that I'm doing, so that way it helps me to stay just a little bit more grounded,
Right.
and to where I think, sometimes you can waste time. So when I'm having it in front of me and I'm checking things off the list that I've scheduled for the week before or 2 weeks ago when I did it,
Right.
it feels like I've made progress because I've checked some of those things off. And it makes this whole monotony of this new real estate world seem just a little bit more organized for me.
And I'm using a calendar for like my meetings, but I need a different calendar so that I can schedule by the hour. So I can schedule tasks on it.
Bring me that.
Okay. I tell you, I have, this is my personal preference. I've gone back and forth about 1,000 different systems. What I tend to feel works the best for me right now is this. So I have basically, if you can see this here, at the top is kind of some ideas. It's like notes that I'm taking on classes or thoughts that I have, these kind of things, just things that I want to keep my eye on. The middle section here it's really intended to be for appointments. Or I'm sorry, down here is really intended to be appointments. I don't really keep appointments down here. I don't like it that way. I like the appointments to be digital. So I'm looking at my schedule all the time. That way I can see, I can move things around. I can repeat events week after week after week. And then here in this middle section is where I'm putting like the projects and the people I need to deal with, right? Call this person, email this, send this report, research that, print out that kind of stuff. So I want to make sure that you guys have, and then if somebody says, well, do you have a minute or can you do this at this day and time? Then I just simply look at my calendar, which shows me here.
And
right? Can you guys see this?
What company is that you purchased that one from?
This is called PlannerPad. PlannerPad. Okay, but you can go here.
Okay, I can see it now.
Can you see? Wait, hold on. All right, you see this? So this
Yes.
shows me, for example, every time slot I have, right? So when I have openings and when I do not have openings, and if like, so for example,
Wait a minute.
I'm seeing your command, your
Yeah.
contact.
oh, all right, hang on. What about now?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, so like I have the launch mastermind every Friday from 1 to 2. So I go to the next week, it's there. The next week, it's there, right? So like for example, we would want to put our, you know, our 15-minute coaching session or the 8:30 sessions, like week after week, they're always going to be there, right? And then I can show you where the openings are in the calendar, right? So tomorrow, if somebody wants to meet at 4 o'clock, I have an opening for that, right? But if somebody wants to meet at 4 o'clock today, I don't have an opening for that. But if Tanya Bailey wants to not come, then I can just reschedule her or whatever. So my appointments, I prefer to look at it on a calendaring system. But my to-dos and like my thoughts and like my brain dumps, like I have here, right? And I even have, wait, you can't see that. Like here, I even have like a sticky note in there, right? Because not even something I want to write down permanently. It's just something I need to be cognizant of the next couple of days. Does that make sense? All right, so, and then we talked about having like a board of some sort that had like, okay, these are the list of people that I am currently courting. These are the people that have agreed to work with me exclusively, and these are the upcoming listings that I have. And you've got that right in front of you where you can determine, you know, make sure nothing slips through the cracks. Does that make sense?
It does.
What are you struggling with, Ebony?
Absolutely. That's what I'm looking for.
Getting out of my head. And then like everybody has their niche and I'm trying to find mine. I think I'm zeroing in on 2, but I don't know if those are going to be my permanent ones. And I'm thinking more of first-time home buyers and, well, before I lost my contacts, then vendor relations. So I'm trying to find a middle ground between those. Um, Finding that middle ground and finding out how not to just keep hitting brick walls. I haven't been calling my FSBOs the way that I want to, so I'm so glad that Heather and I are going to get back to that. But I need to find what works for me, and I haven't. And I think once I find that, I'm going to be okay, but I'm struggling.
Okay, so what I would encourage you to,
I just sent you my home buyer presentation, the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
I know you asked me for it a while back, but I just emailed it to you and a couple of other people who asked for it.
Okay.
So you should really ask Tammy Mills about helping you do a virtual presentation for your first-time home buyers.
But I don't know who to market it to. You know, like I just don't know. Like I know I'm going to be great at this. I just don't know when. What'd you say?
Your apartment complex.
Well, I don't live there. It was just some place that I was working. So now I have to go back, you know, and what I was gonna do is, you know, pretty much just make a flyer. I still haven't done that, and mail it out to everyone, you know, being that they knew me. And then Bill, remember when I was talking about the other property manager that I knew and I wanted to do business, so I did surprise and delight her. She
okay,
wasn't there, but I still left it. And then I text her, I let her know, hey, I dropped it off. Unfortunately, she was out of town. Like I thought that we were going back and forth, but she never said that she wasn't in Georgia. You know, she kind of just told me where it was that she was at. So I left that there, but that's kind of like a pause right now because those were the 2 projects that I wanted to work on this week was getting the flyers out and building my rapport with her really, really good so that I can use everybody who's on notice as potential clients. So I'm trying to break
all right, so
ground.
let's talk about the first thing. What about the flyer? How come that hasn't gotten done? What's getting in the way?
I don't have the I should have done the flyer. That sheer me not planning because even though I don't have the rent roll yet, I could have still done the flyer and I haven't even done the flyer. So that's me.
Okay, so when is that going to get done?
That's going to get done today.
By
No,
what time?
no, I have to tour some. I have a tour today. That's not going to get done today. Tomorrow is what? Thursday. Thursday is
No,
not
today
a.
is Thursday.
Oh my God. Lord Jesus, I'm a day behind. Okay, tomorrow I still don't have a lot going. So I just
How
have
long is it going to
8:30.
take to make your flyer?
I don't know. Like I'm not good with it. So the last flyer I made took me like 2 hours, like of just going back and forth, making sure that everything was perfect.
Okay.
I could do it. You know what? When I finish, I have to tour these people to see a property at 7, and I should be back over here. No, I'm pushing it for today.
Have
Okay.
you used the Michael Lewis Marketing Suite yet for flyers?
No, what is that? Michael Lewis.
So if you go to, they actually have a brand new listing presentation and buyer presentation. I haven't actually looked at it yet, but Michael Lewis Marketing Suite.com. And then I think your username is the your KW email, and your password is, do you remember what it is, Donna?
I'm sorry, I do not. I don't have it in front of me.
I have to ask Lucy, but I think it's in your packet, your
Okay.
orientation packet.
Yeah, and I can send it to you later if we all have the same password.
Yeah, I believe you do all have the same password to start, and then you reset it. So if you go in there, they have a ton of like really cool modern graphics and templates and that kind of stuff that you can use for just listed, just sold, for property flyers, for open house notices, for presentations, for stuff, you know, stuff like you're doing, you know, seminar type things. Okay, so we need to make sure that time like that is in the schedule. So talk to me about how your schedule is organized.
Okay.
If I looked at your schedule, would I know you're a real estate agent?
Um, based on what schedule? Are you talking about based on like a daily schedule or based on a weekly schedule?
Daily. What are you up to the rest of the day?
Well, my day is almost done. Like after this call, I'm gonna get back online and I'm gonna do what I said that I was gonna do for Donna. And then when I finish that, I'm gonna head out and I'm gonna go tour the properties. And then when I come back home, that's when it kind of ends. But today, pretty much the day started out with just what did I do today? I did the two classes. I did Aubrey's class. I did our PC class.
So
Branson.
what about your overall schedule? Like, do you know when you lead generate, when you lead follow up, when you practice your scripts, when you
Yeah.
attend
So
classes,
that's 9
when
to
you have
10.
appointment slots?
Mm-hmm.
Do you follow
So
that?
this week, no.
Why
Like
not?
last week, I was doing good. I don't know. Like this week, I've just been all over the place, and I can't seem to. I couldn't. I couldn't get a grip of it, like at all. No matter what I tried to do, it's just like it was something always popping up. Oh, I have to do this, and I've been running, and I've just been back and forth
Okay.
to where I
So
haven't.
that's where I want you to read. If you're having a kind of a moment of like chaos, you got to reach out to us so we can help you. Because at that moment, what we're gonna say, okay, breathe, breathe, breathe. Okay, Ebony, what are the things that you're working on right now? Right? What's in front of you? Okay. And then myself and any of your accountability partners, they're aware of your goals. They know what the big rocks are. And they would say to you, it kind of sounds like item 4 should wait a few days. Item 2 should be happening in the next 10 minutes. And item 3 can wait until tonight when you're in your pajamas. Right? And then you're like, oh yeah, that does seem like it makes a lot of sense. Right? And then you go attack those things in the proper order based on not what you feel like doing, but what is going to be most impactful for you or your family or your business. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So can I be honest with you?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to even come to the 8:30 call tomorrow unless that flyer's done. Use that 30 minutes to make the flyer. That's what's going to move your business forward. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Hanging out with me for 30 minutes in the morning, I mean, I hope that it's impactful, but that's not the top priority right now. The top priority, you can watch that video later. We've got to get that flyer out because that is what stands in the way of you and a handful of buyers.
Give me just a moment. This is the office calling. Hold on. Good afternoon.
Is that Mel?
Hey, Melody. How are you? I'm good.
Hey, tell Mel she's on a call.
Okay, for when?
You better say yes.
Okay, not a problem.
Say yes.
Hey, Bill, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
So my daughter closed on her home. My daughter and son-in-law closed on their home on Friday, and it was a
Perfect, not a problem. I'm
referral
definitely
for me.
available. Other than today, I know I have a tour today, but other than that, I'm fine. Okay,
How long do I,
perfect. I'm there.
how long does it take for the referral check
Okay,
to
thanks.
come?
Thanks, Melody.
So I
Okay,
would
bye-bye.
say if you don't get it like in a week, you should probably reach back out.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So you got an opportunity?
I did. So, Melody just called and said she's going to give my number to Martha Loco. She's under the weather, and she may need me to just show her property. Like that's fine. I'm there.
There you go. She's actually got COVID right now.
That's what she was telling me.
Yeah. Good. You know why you got that?
Divine intervention.
Well, divine intervention assumes that you had nothing to do with it. I don't think that's what happened. I think you got that opportunity because you smile and you're involved and you are proving yourself to be a hard worker.
Oh, thank you.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Give yourself credit where it's due now.
I know, Ebony, you need to cheer up. You look a little down. That's
I'm gonna
not
get there.
your wiener. Come on.
No, guys, we don't take listings. We don't get listings. We earn listings, right?
We do.
So she didn't just like throw a dart at a bunch of names on the board and it hit your name and she calls you. She called you because you show up and you participate in the coffee sessions and you participate in the training classes and you're in PC and you're smiling all the time. That's why you get opportunity,
Oh,
because you're involved. So
that is true.
stay involved,
Stay involved.
keep contributing, and keep sharpening your skills, and there'll be more opportunities to come.
Okay. So what should I be? I think where I'm struggling too is I don't know, and this is probably a Kathy question. I don't know enough about the Linden side.
Okay.
And I want to know because if I can understand it, to break it down, if I can fully grasp it, I can explain it to somebody else, and then it's kind of like that confidence level just jumps way up. So I feel that I just don't grasp the whole. I'm not grasping it yet. Like the light bulbs have not went off,
Okay.
and I don't want to sound ignorant when I'm speaking to somebody. You know, I can tell you numbers somewhat. You know, I can tell you what you know, the numbers are on a fixed rate. But when it gets in more detail, it's kind of like deer in headlights.
Okay, I'm going to ask the other two people on the call for a very honest, no right or wrong response to this. Okay. Would answering Ebony's question in the next 30 minutes be helpful for you or not helpful for you?
Oh, it would be helpful for me. I was actually thinking maybe that could be another opportunity for a class to have
Yeah.
Tammy Mills or Kathy do a class for us on the
So
whole
we've
lending
had
side.
some sessions, I believe, and we've had some sessions just from the regular market center on that topic, but I can spend close to half an hour on it right now if you guys would find that to be helpful. Would that be helpful?
I would think it would be helpful.
All right, hang on 1 second, okay? 1 second.
Keep your head up, Ebony.
I'm gonna get there. Hold on real quick.
I'm on the call trying to explain it right now. Okay, Kathy is getting ready to email me one, and I will use it to share my screen and go over a couple things with you. Okay, would that be helpful?
Sounds good. That'll be helpful.
All right, give me 2 seconds.
I'm really slow on my mute and unmute. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you need like a button to push or something. You need like a remote control, I think. All right, David, I hope this is helpful for you too, sir. Okay, let's just do a little bit of kind of generalized talk, and then I will walk you through some true numbers, okay? I kind of view the lending process in 2 ways, okay? The first is what the bank will allow you to borrow. The second part of that discussion is, am I comfortable with the monthly payment that requires? Okay, so let me give you an example. I go to the bank, or I go to the lender, I sit down with Kathy, and she says, okay, you've got this type of income, you've got this credit score, you've got this kind of debt, all that stuff, right? We look at your basic financial profile. And we say, based on this, we believe that we will issue you a loan for $300,000. Okay. And then the next question is, well, how much money do you have to put down? We're not going to go into the weeds about like down payment assistance and all that. We'll just talk about regular old normal stuff. Okay. So they say, well, I got $10,000 to put down. Cool. So they probably have close to 3.5%. And if that's all they have, they're pretty much going to go FHA. FHA loans require a minimum of 3.5%, period. Okay, conventional loans, you generally can get for anywhere from 5% down payment and higher. More often than not, you see them in 5% increments. So like 5% down, 10% down, 15% down, 20% down. Okay, generally speaking, if you put any less than 20% down on a property, you're going to pay something called PMI, private mortgage insurance. For a lack of a better way to put it, PMI is essentially foreclosure insurance for the bank that they make you pay the premium for. Meaning if you go belly up and they can't get made whole on their loan, then that offsets their loss. Does that make sense? Follow that? Okay, so I'm still waiting on this email. Okay, so when they say, Bill, based on your income and your assets and your debt and all that stuff, we will issue you a loan for $300. Then you're going to put your $10,000 or $11,000 down. So your total budget is now, let's say, $315. So then I take, and then I say, well, okay, great. I appreciate you telling me that. How much is that going to cost? Okay. And they say, well, according to our interest rate and our math, that's going to cost $1,650 a month. To which I say, great, I can afford that. I feel comfortable. That fits into my personal budget. Let's move forward. Then I call my realtor. So I call you, Ebony, and I say, Ebony, good news. I can buy a home. They're going to give me a loan, an FHA loan of $300,000, which with my down payment included, that's going to be about $315,000 will be my budget. Would you still like me as a client? And you're like, hell yeah. I just need to send you some paperwork and we'll be official, right? Boom, now you got yourself a buyer. Okay, the alternative is the guy tells me, or Kathy tells me, hey, that loan's going to be $1,650 monthly. And I say, whoa, I don't really feel comfortable with that. Okay, because what the bank's budget is for you and their tolerance level for risk is possibly different than your level of risk and what your budget says, right? So if $1,650 is too much for me on a monthly basis, what I need to say is, well, how much am I willing to pay, right? And I say, oh, well, I'd be comfortable at sorry, I'm trying to look at like 3 different screens at the same time. I'd be comfortable paying $1,550. And they say, oh, okay, I get it. So now they'll recalculate my budget, if you will, based on trying to earmark a payment of $1,550. Then they'll cross match that with how much they'll let me borrow. So I'm not saying these numbers are accurate. I'm just throwing out some numbers. But let's say now they'll say, okay, well, instead of 300, you need to be at 280. So then you add the 10 grand to the 280. Now your budget's 390. That way, or 290, when we walk into a property and you buy that property, you want to buy that property for 285 or 290 or something. Number one, we know the bank will be cool with it. And number two, we know the payment that requires is going to be doable for your own personal needs. Does that make sense? Follow that? So it's a two-pronged approach. Number one is we need to make sure, we need to make sure that the bank is comfortable, but also we need to make sure that the buyer himself or herself is comfortable, financially speaking. So that's what you need. Now, keep in mind, sometimes your prospects are, especially if they're friends of yours, could be a little shaky on wanting you to know all their financials, right? So you might say something to the prospect to the effect that, you know, you're going to deal specifically with the lender, and they're going to know all your financials, but I'm not privy to any of that information. I don't know what you make. I mean, I have a rough idea what your income is based on what they allow you to afford, but I don't know where your debts are and where your credits are and what your credit score is and all that. It's not something I have to worry about. For privacy reasons, I'm not involved at all in that, right? So if you get anybody that is you kind of feel is a little reluctant to share that information, you can give them that response, which is, hey, you know, this is for the lender to sort out with you. Okay, that's essentially the pre-qualification process or the pre-approval process. Okay, make sense? So now you have. Sorry.
Can I ask a quick question? Is there a difference between pre-qualification and pre-approval? Because I got a letter that says pre-qualification letter.
So the problem is there's not really uniform definitions that all lenders and all real estate agents subscribe to. The way that I've always thought about it is that a pre-qualification conversation would sound something like this. Kathy, I make 80 grand a year. How much can I afford? 300. Is your credit score good? Yeah, credit score is good. Right? There's not a whole lot of income verification, tax return review, credit score pull, that kind of stuff. A pre-approval is when they've done a little bit more homework, right? Now you go ask 20 different trainers and they may have different opinions. That's kind of the way I've always thought of the terms, okay? I want to make sure that my buyer goes through the motions, especially if they're like an independent contractor or they're a business owner or something like that, because what they make and what the government thinks they make are totally different, right? Because they got write-offs and all these kind of things, right? I'm actually going to put this camera over here since I'm going to be looking more at you guys. So I would rather see a pre-approval, but the way I'm going to know whether I got what I want is to say, let's say I have the listing and I get an offer from a buyer. I'm going to talk to the buyer's agent and say, hey, tell me a little bit about I'm going to call the lender actually. I'm going to call the lender of the buyer that's trying to buy my seller's home. I'm going to say, hey, my name is Bill. I'm with Keller Williams. I happen to be the listing agent for 123 Smith Street. And your client, Joe, and his wife, Karen, want to buy this home. And I just wanted to make sure that you've actually reviewed their profile, that you've actually seen their tax returns, you've pulled their credit. Is there any chance that this home is not going to close? Is there anything you're concerned about? Right? To which point, I'm not asking him to share their income or their debt score, credit score, any of that. I'm asking you, hey, I'm about to allow my seller to pull this home off the market to work with you and your client. Is this thing going to close? I want to know give me all the bad news now. I don't want any bad news from this moment forward. Does that make sense? Now, there's only so many things you can control, but if this guy's got some kind of, He's got some issue with the IRS, and he's got some issue with his wife, old wife, wanting, you know, alimony and all this kind of crap. I want to know about it, right? Because I don't want to have to explain it to the next round of buyers after I pull the home off the market and then it flops. You see what I'm saying? So I'm going to ask those questions. So now what we have is, let's just say now we have a pre-approved buyer. So you should now feel comfortable setting up a meeting with that person, with that man or woman, and all the decision makers if possible, and presenting what the buying experience is going to look like with you, right? That's the buyer presentation, right? That's the buyer interview, if you will. All right. And what you're looking for is you're looking to find out, you know, what are your goals? Why are they important to you? When do they need to be accomplished by? What does winning with you look like? What does losing with you look like, right? We're trying to figure out, how do I best serve this person? And I know this is a little off color, but how do I want to say this without sounding like a total ass? Most everyone is crazy, okay? What we're trying to figure out is, are you too crazy to leave my family for, right? Like, I'll deal with this much crazy, but I don't want to leave my family for this much crazy to go hang out with you. You see what I'm saying? So I want to try to figure out, like, is this going to be a pleasurable experience? Is this person willing to like work as a team with me? Is this person receptive to the suggestions that I'm making, right? Is this person trying to buy a $600,000 house for $300,000? Because I ain't got time for that. Right? Is this person going to want to see 600 homes before they make a choice? I ain't got time for that either. Is this person going to want to, you know, look at a $300,000 home that's been on the market for 10 minutes and want to offer, you know, 150 for it? Because I ain't got time for that either. So everyone's a little crazy. Me too. Okay. But I got 2 little kids at home and a wife that I love. I'm not going to go leave the house for everybody. Does that make sense? What do you hear when you hear me say that, by the way?
That you have more business than we do. We're kind of desperate. We're leaving the house for anybody right now.
Well,
I'm driving to Stockbridge next Tuesday, so.
I will too. Like,
I've never been to Stockbridge in my whole life. It's too close for a bathroom break on the way to Florida. Right?
I got to go to Stockbridge right now. Maybe next year I won't have to go to Stockbridge.
So
but this year,
I think there's probably a bit of truth to what you just said. However, understand that, you know, every minute that you spend with a unqualified person or an unrealistic person is a minute that you don't have the ability to spend with somebody who could be a better suited client for you.
absolutely. But
Or
what
it's time that
that
you're not able to spend courting all the other people that you know that may be a better experience working with them. Okay.
well,
Okay.
what happens if it's just that one person, that crazy one that may get you to the great one? Because I think, you know, just looking at our class, we have a bunch of great people. And I see the potential in just so much in everybody. We're awesome, but we need other people to know that. Like, look, when I get there, I'm there, and you're going to absolutely love me because I'm committed. But it's getting there in those baby steps and that humbling
Yeah. So
process.
you're gonna. It's a lot of experience to try to. It's a lot of practice to try to kind of gauge like how they're going to behave in the future, right? So I would err on the side of, I'm going to work with you unless they violate like 1 or 2 of my biggest pet peeves. One is you don't show up for appointments. Okay, that pisses me off. I've got very little tolerance for that. Okay, if you no show me, oh my gosh, you're gonna have to be real nice to get back on my schedule,
Mhm.
right? And the other thing is, if you're a bigot, I don't give a damn what you want to buy. We're not working together. Make sense?
Mhm.
So like err on the side of, I'm gonna serve you, but you should have some respect for yourself and your time, where you just don't let somebody run all over you because they think you're a realtor and should do whatever they feel like doing. Does that make sense?
A lot of sense. I had someone say to me when their credit did pull through, well, this is what you're getting paid for.
Yeah,
No.
you done. Sorry.
Yeah, like my credit's
I
fine.
wish you the best, sir, but it sounds like we're not going to be a good fit. I appreciate everything. I wish you all the best. And you get off the phone and you move on to somebody that's going to treat you with more respect. You deserve more respect. You're spending time every single day developing your skills. You have a great background. You work hard. You're a person of integrity. You tell those people to screw off.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to this closing estimate for a second. Okay. So now we have a pre-approved buyer. And what I want to know if I'm working with a pre-approved buyer is I want to see what is often called a loan worksheet. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen one more time and I'm going to show you this worksheet. All right, can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Yes.
what we have here is a loan worksheet. Now what this does is I want to know, for example, roughly speaking, what are the estimated closing costs that my buyer is going to incur when he or she buys this property. Okay. I want to know that ahead of time, number one, to eliminate one more round of stress when my buyer finally does pick something. And I want to know what type of loan they're getting, and I want to know how much closing costs my buyer needs to bring so that I can ask for the appropriate amount of closing costs. So for example, Donna just had a deal where her client agreed to receive no closing costs from the seller. Okay. Not a good thing or a bad thing. It just is what it is. But she should not have agreed to that if she didn't understand clearly, which I made sure she did, and Donna was already all over it, what the estimated closing cost would be. So not only do you need to know what the estimated closing costs are so that you don't ask for more than you need and you don't ask for less than you need. Okay. So let's pretend like this is our buyer. So this is my wife and I bought a home this past July. Okay. And we got a 30-year fixed loan. We put 80 or we got an 80% loan. We put down 20% to avoid PMI. Okay. The value of the property was $605,000. So we got a loan for $484,000. Okay. Closing date was the July the 1st. First payment was September the 1st. Okay. The taxes, the closing costs are going to be a function of the taxes. Okay. So we need to know what the taxes are. So I was my own realtor, obviously, but this is telling me that based on when we closed, the taxes, I paid $589 per month for taxes. Okay, so the tax bill per year is $6,500. And I needed 3 months of insurance, which is $371. And I needed to pay a full month of homeowners insurance to, all at once at the very beginning, which is about $1,500. And then I closed on the first day of the month. So I had $1,700 worth of interest to pay in order to close on that day and have my first payment due September the 1st. So that is establishing what's called the prepaids. Prepaids / escrow accounts, that's one part of closing cost, okay? There's really two parts. One is estimated prepaids and escrows, and the other is what's normally called closing cost, even though all of them together are really closing cost, okay? Now, I closed on July 1st, okay? So my first payment was due September 1st. And on that day, I paid 1/12 of the estimated I paid the principal and interest, of course, but I also paid 1/12 of the estimated taxes and 1/12 of the estimated insurance. Okay. Now, problem is the tax bill is due in like the first or second week in November. So when the tax bill comes, they expect me to pay the whole thing, but I've only paid 1 or 2/12 payments, right? So I had to put a certain number of dollars into that escrow account on day one so that there would be an appropriate amount of money on there when the tax bill came. That's the origin of these prepaids. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing for the insurance. I had to pay a year of that in advance, and then there's going to be a monthly 1/12 payment, 1/12 of the estimated payment that I make each month. So next year when that bill comes, there's enough money in the escrow for that to be handled. Okay. The grand total of all that estimated was $10,000, not $10,094. Now, let's say I found a property. Now, she made this specifically for the home we were buying. We bought an off-market home, but let's say I found a place and the tax bill per year was $5,000 rather than $6,500. Then we would just recalculate on our own, and myself as the agent could do that calculation without even needing any help from the lender. So if this thing happens on a Saturday or Sunday, I can easily go in and say, oh, let's just manipulate the difference in taxes so that we can not ask for too much closing cost. Does that make sense? Okay, so we also had closing cost. Okay, so closing cost is here. Let me make sure in this section. So closing costs are essentially all the fees associated with borrowing the appropriate amount of money, right, to buy the home, right? So that's the appraisal fee, the origination fee, the credit report fee, the flood cert, any type of transfer taxes and the home warranty and all this kind of crap, right? It's all itemized right here. So the grand total of all of that, right, was $7,800. So in technically speaking, my closing costs were almost $18,000. Okay, I would say 10,000 and change was the prepaids and escrow, which by the way is a full year of taxes, a full year of insurance. So it's not like it's not necessarily a cost. I'm just I'm escrowing. I'm earmarking a certain amount of money to keep the lender happy for bills that are going to come in the near future. Make sense? Okay, and then my closing costs are $17,836. Now, in my incredible amount of negotiation skill, which resulted in me getting $0 in closing costs, paid for by the seller, I was responsible for all of that money, right? So, by the way, I bought an off-market home, which means that there's really no incentive for the seller to do squat for me, right? Because I was the only person in the universe that knew it was available. And I was doing my best to absolutely prevent them from telling anyone else about it, right? So what that means basically is that I had no negotiation power. Winning for me was getting the house and preventing anyone else from getting it. Follow that?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can't behave like I've got all the negotiation power in the world when I don't have any, right? So I need to be aware of what position I'm in. When I originally proposed this, when I proposed an offer to this particular seller, I said, I'd really like to sell my other house before I buy yours. And originally they said, okay, we might entertain that, like a contingency, right? When it came down to it, they said, we'd prefer not to do that. So I had to buy the home before I even sold my other home. Right. So not only did I have to come up with this cash, I had to come up with a down payment, and I had to take the risk of having 2 mortgages, which interestingly enough, I had carried for about 7 or 8 months.
Oh my gosh.
Right. But when you want to move, you want to move, right? So sometimes we make sacrifices to get to where we're headed, right? So Ebony, just a sidebar in your situation, yeah, I didn't want to lose. I don't want to own 2 homes at once. I actually own 3 homes. I don't want to own 3 homes at once, right? But I wanted something else more than I didn't want that, right? So yeah, this guy, I mean, he might not want to lose money, but if his fiance wants to live in a different home, he might lose some money, right? So that's why we got to talk about motivation and desire a lot with our people, because we have to figure out where the pain is and where the pleasure is. See what I'm saying? Okay, so let's walk through this. Now, if I was somebody who was going to go, ask for a bunch of closing costs, then I'd say, hey, I need $17,000 in closing cost. Make sense? So my down payment was $121,000, right? Plus 10,000, plus the 7,800, plus some little stupid fees, 242 and 75 or whatever. So total funds to close were $139,000 and change. Okay, I had $6,000 in earnest money. So these are my credits. I had some lender paid credits, and that's a whole different story, but some aggregate adjustments to the escrow account, and that's my total number of dollars at closing. So if I look at that number and say, oh my gosh, I only have 125,000, or I only have 120,000. Okay, well then you're going to need a portion of these closing fees offset by the seller. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, what questions do you have after you look at that? Does that help you better understand kind of number one, the pre-approval process, and number two, the difference between escrows and closing costs and how that functions into number one, being prepared prior to taking a buyer out, and number two, knowing how to explain to a buyer, hey, here's what will happen if you get closing costs paid or a portion of closing costs paid, and here's what your obligation would be if you don't. Does that make sense?
Yes. Where is my video?
What? What did you say? Let me stop sharing the screen.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, what questions do you have with respect to that? Does
So
that
do
make
we
sense?
always have to put down, I'm looking at it, and you said it was a year. Like that number is so big.
What do you mean? A year?
Like a year of taxes. It was a year that I wish I
Okay,
had
let's talk about that for a second. I think I'll answer a different question, but I think it'll answer your question. Most counties, Fulton County, for example, they have one tax bill per year, or they collect taxes once a year. It's usually in November. Okay. So let's say you close prior to November. Okay, when the tax bill comes, the person who owns the house as of that day is going to be responsible for paying the full tax bill. So if let's say I sell the home in March, when that new buyer, when the tax bill comes in, 8 months later, is going to, hang on. Okay, when the tax bill comes 8 months later, the new owner is going to pay the full amount. But that's not fair, right? Because I owned the home for 3 months at the beginning of the year. So at closing, I'm going to give that person 3 months worth of the estimated tax bill to settle up.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we close in December after that tax bill's already been paid, then the seller is going to say, well, I already paid the whole tax bill, but you're going to own the home for a month at the end of the year. So I want you to pay me a month's worth of taxes, which is completely legitimate, and that's how it works. So the buyer will pay the 1 month of taxes back. They also won't need to put 11 months of taxes into escrow because it's going to be close to that before the next tax bill is due. So depending on what time of year you close will depend on how much money needs to be used to fund the escrow accounts. Make sense?
It does.
So if the closing occurs, the closer the closing occurs to after the tax bill is due, the less amount of money will be needed to put into escrow, which of course will reduce the closing cost total. Okay. Now you don't have to understand that perfectly. You just need to, although I'd like you to, and I'm happy to explain it 1,000 times if that's what it takes. But the main thing is you want to be able to get a notice like I just showed you that kind of breaks it all down so that a buyer can fully understand, hey, if I get $3,000 worth of closing costs paid, this is what it's going to take for me to buy the home, cash to close. If I get 7,000, this is what it's going to take. If I get 0, this is what it's going to take. Right. So we had this come up with another one of our colleagues, I think it was 2 days ago, where they were trying to change the appraisal came in. They were trying to change the appraisal price. The seller was willing to go down in the sales price, but didn't want to pay all the closing costs that they had previously agreed to. Okay, fine. Back to the negotiation board. So if you're going to now charge me, let's say $10,000 less for the home, now I don't have to borrow as much money. Right? Now I don't have to come to the table with as much money. Right? Now my monthly payment is different. However, you're telling me I need to pay more closing costs. So let's go back to the drawing board. So I called Kathy. I said, hey, if the price is $595, and by the way, some of the closing costs are sensitive to the actual loan amount, and some are sensitive to the actual sales price. So all the numbers are going to get adjusted, right? You say, hey, they only want to give me X number of dollars now, but they'll sell it to me at this price. Run the numbers again for me. So she runs the numbers again, and you're staring at the number of dollars you got to bring to the table, and it's quite simple. Either the answer is I can make this work or I can't, right? And then based on what your findings are, you can determine how you want to react to what they're proposing. Have I made things simpler for you or less simple?
No, I'm getting it. I think that I was really good with this part at school, but it's kind of getting a little fuzzy a little bit. So when we're going back to, if we're going back to pity, what's going to be a rule of thumb for what someone, when they're purchasing a home, is going to be annual, and what's going to be the rule of thumb that can be monthly, bi-monthly, or quarterly? So at least that way, if I'm explaining it and have to give a roundabout figure of what somebody is going to pay, I can kind of come up with those numbers quickly.
Well, the fact is you're probably never going to be asked to do that, because that's really more of a lender related question. Okay. But PITI is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Okay.
Mhm.
The P&I, the principal and interest, is a simple mathematical calculation based on the number of years they're going to have the mortgage,
Mhm.
right? So if I borrow 300,000 on a 30-year loan, and the interest rate, obviously, this is the principal payment, this is the interest rate. That's not going to change, assuming it's a fixed rate loan. Okay. The taxes and insurance has the possibility of changing every year, right? So pretty much, I mean, I don't know if I've ever gotten a notice from an insurance company saying your rate's going down. Often, they always say it's going up. Okay, so you guys saw my insurance was like just shy of $1,600. I just paid a bill for $1,800 something dollars, right? So it went up. That's to be expected, right? And that's, by the way, why you should be, people need to know that are buying homes, hey, the taxes and insurance part of your monthly payment could fluctuate, right? As your property appreciates in value, the county's gonna want more taxes, right?
Mhm.
Do you think that, well, let's not even go there, okay? Um, More than likely, taxes are gonna go up before they go down. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. Now, in hindsight, or another alternative is, let's say the shift happens and my $600,000 home is worth 550. Well, I'm going to notify the county and say, hey, my place is worth 550 now. I want to pay less taxes, right? I happen to know the chief appraiser for DeKalb County personally, so I'll call him up and say, hey, look at my taxes. Tell me if you think I got an argument, right? See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you asked what is monthly, what's quarterly, all that stuff. Basically, you're going to be making a PITI payment every single month.
Mhm.
Okay, it's going to include the principal payment, it's going to include the interest payment, and it's going to include 1/12 of the estimated tax bill and 1/12 of the estimated insurance bill. When you buy the home, they're going to want you to pay a full year uh, or a certain amount of months of your tax bill to pad the escrow account. And they usually want about 2 months cushion, or meaning 2 months extra, and generally a full year of your homeowner's insurance. Because I was buying the home so close to when the tax bill was going to be due, I had to put an abnormally high number of months of tax payment into the escrow. So, generally speaking, the taxes and insurances, the vast majority of lenders will require that you escrow. I've never seen a borrower be able to not escrow taxes and insurance if they're putting less than 20% down. If they're putting 20% or more down, under certain circumstances, a lender may allow you not to escrow. However, because they deem that to be more of a financial risk, right, then they'll charge you a higher rate. That's the way they offset risk, right? So for example, let's say like, Escrowing for taxes is essentially the lender mandating you budget monthly for taxes. If you don't escrow for taxes, they're just going to send you a bill for $6,500 and say, pay it, and hope to God the borrower is disciplined enough to have that money. You follow the difference?
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Okay, so that's why in the contract it says it uses language such as, hang on just one second, I want to make sure this lady knows where to go. Just one sec. We're running a little late and she's running a little late too. Hang on one sec.
Good, okay?
Minute, good.
Mhm.
All right. Wait a minute, can I go to fucking Lewis house?
Maybe she stays too far. No.
Okay.
You cut the camera.
Oh, but can I?
What was I saying?
Hold on.
Donna, was all that clear? Was that helpful?
It's clear. It's helpful.
You sound a little overwhelmed.
No, I'm not. I was just distracted by a text from the buyer that I'm working with.
Okay. The absolute worst thing that you can do is not help the buyer understand all the financial obligations that they have. Period. So if they think they're bringing $6,500 to the closing table and it ends up being $8,500, they're going to freak out. Right? So you
But
need
shouldn't, before then, like, I don't understand even how that happens. Like, I get you could, I don't,
it
on
could
a,
happen because they're not working with a mortgage professional that is diligent and honest and communicative and prepared. And it could happen because somebody makes a typo, or you forget about a deadline, or you don't help them gather all the information they need to be savvy buyers, right? That's why a sheet like this is so important.
so as long as we have that, like when we're starting the whole process of it, if we have that worksheet and we're staying accurate and diligent towards that, we should be, that could never be our circumstance, because that right there, oh my God, like I die.
Yeah. Generally speaking, I mean, they got to lock the rate, right? The loan worksheet is that's not a rate lock, right? So if I say, hey, Kathy, run the numbers for me, and the rate is 4.5, and then if I don't lock the rate for 2 weeks and it's 4 3/4,
Oh,
then yeah, that could change some things,
okay.
right? But it could go the other way too. So if the rate happens to go down, then now the buying that mortgage or committing to that mortgage might be less expensive.
What do you mean when you say the rate isn't locked? Like, how do you, I don't understand that. You was like, if the rate isn't locked and then it goes up.
Yeah. So okay, good question. We'll end with this. So let's say I'm the borrower, I'm the buyer, and I asked for this loan worksheet from Kathy, and she says, okay, today's rate is 4 1/4. Okay. She gives me the worksheet, so I know how to present my offer. I get it accepted. And the closing, interestingly enough, I mean, this is a real life example. Okay. We went under contract in like February or so. Okay. And for a variety of reasons, we were not closing until July. Primarily, it was when the seller wanted to vacate. Right. So that was a bit of an odd circumstance. Normally, it's not, what would that be? That was like almost 5 months of being under contract. That's very rare. More often than not, it's like 30 to 45 days. So more often than not, you'd take the contract back to the lender and say, all right, we're supposed to close in 30 days. Then the lender will circle back with the buyer and say, okay, let's talk about making formal loan application, and you've given me all your tax returns and all your pay stubs, and it's going to feel like they're going to ask for a stool sample by the time the whole thing's done with. I mean, they are taking a giant risk. Okay. However, it's a calculated risk. And so then they're going to lock the rate, which means you commit to that loan. And whatever the rate is on that day, that's the rate you're going to get when the closing happens. So basically, my wife and I watched the market for 4 months or so before we locked the rate. So if you lock the rate for normally most rate locks are like 30 to 45 days, but if you want to lock the rate for even longer, it's more expensive. So I had Kathy, I said, Kathy, just you watch the market every day. You tell me when you think it's a good day to lock, and I'll lock, right? So I'm not relying on my expertise as a buyer. I'm not relying on my expertise as a buyer's agent. I'm saying, hey, you're the professional. You tell me. You're the boss. So she calls me one day and she says, today's our day, lock. I said, done, right? And because I put Kathy through the ringer when we first started getting to know each other, now I trust her. Now I know she's got my back, so I trust her. She says, lock, I lock. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So what you're doing is you're locking the rate so that you can confirm what the ultimate payment's going to be.
So you said it gets more expensive the longer you wait.
If you lock it for a longer period of time, it's going to be more expensive to do that, because what's happening is, let's say you lock it for 90 days at 4 1/4, and within that 90 days, the market goes up to 4 3/4. Now the lender's made a commitment to loan you the money at 4 1/4, which is not, there's a bigger gap between, there's a longer time for volatility to happen. And so to offset that, they're going to make it more expensive for you.
Okay.
That's why all the banks own all the cool property. That's why the bank's buildings are bigger than any of our buildings. It's because it's a pretty good business to be in. Makes
Okay.
sense?
It does. It's getting there. It's
And here's the
clicking.
deal. So in that purchase, I want you to make sure, we'll end with this final thought. Okay. On the day of closing, I showed up with $605,000 to buy somebody's home. And then whatever it was, 121,000 of it was my money, and 484,000 of it was the bank's money. So if you think I was concerned with the quality of the home and the due diligence period and the neighborhood and the school districts and the market value and, you know, making sure the inspection stuff was clear and all that, the bank took 4 times as much risk that I did. So don't you think it's reasonable that they're going to do a little research also? That's what the appraisal is. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I only coughed up 20%. They coughed up 80%.
Well,
So
they
don't
have
blame
more
them if
money,
they want to do a little research. See what I'm saying?
Okay.
And if they're going to loan me $484,000, I shouldn't be surprised when they want to know what my birth weight was. Right? It feels like that's what they're going to ask for. They're like, what'd you have for breakfast? I need to make sure it's healthy enough, because I need you alive for 30 more years to make these payments. Right?
It makes sense. Yes.
Now, another part of that sheet is the amount of money that it costs per month, right? So you need to make sure that the buyer is comfortable with that. It's a little over $3,000, right? So they look at my thing and they say, okay, you can afford this. And they say, all you need to pay is $3,100 a month. Can you afford $3,100 a month? I don't know. I got to sit down with my wife and talk about that.
What are you doing?
Right? So the buyer's got to reconfirm that even though the banks was willing to sign off on this,
Come here.
are you willing to sign off on it?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does.
The good news is this has been recorded and you can watch it 1,000 times if you
Okay, because I'm gonna definitely watch it again.
want.
So I have 2 more questions and then I'll stop.
All
So is it a rule of thumb that usually the person who's selling the house, if it's regular market conditions, that they are gonna pay closing costs?
No.
Or can that be?
It's all negotiable. Okay. Generally speaking, the stats actually just came out today for Chartmasters. I'm going to kind of mull through them a little bit and start inserting it in some of that stuff into our classes. The last time I looked, it was about 2/3 of sales had some form of seller concessions for closing cost. But the closing costs, as you saw, are going to be a function of the type of loan, the down payment that the buyer is making, right? And so you can't just say, well, the buyer's going to, the seller will pay closing costs. You got to put a dollar amount on it, because depending on 1,000 different variables, that will depend on how much the closing costs actually are. Okay. So for a seller, let's say the the seller is going to sell the home for 300 and there's going to be $5,000 in closing cost. Okay, so in reality, they're getting 295.
Mhm.
So that's one scenario. The other scenario is they're going to get 295 for the home and not pay any closing cost. To the seller, it's virtually the same. The only difference is the amount of dollars they'll pay the commission on. For a buyer, it makes a big difference because in one scenario, they got to bring 5,000 more dollars to the table, right?
Mhm.
So, and in my personal opinion, I'm not a big like Dave Ramsey fan or any of that. I believe it's, we can borrow money for like 3% right now. I'd rather borrow the closing costs, quite frankly, and pay it off over 30 years, right?
Okay.
That's essentially what scenario number one is. I'm overpaying for the home by $5,000 so that the seller can take that $5,000 and help me with my closing costs. So I'm essentially financing the closing cost. In this
Okay.
type of environment, I personally think that's a strategic move. Okay. So is the seller under any obligation to participate in your closing costs? No. Is there any downfall for asking for them? No. However, if you're in a competitive situation, you may consider not asking for them or asking for less because the seller is going to be saying, okay, I can choose from this offer, this offer, this offer, this offer. Which one gives me the most money and which one gives me the best terms?
Which
Right?
is why we didn't ask for closing costs this time, because the
Exactly.
last time she put in an offer, it was a multiple offer situation. We talked about it. I suggested not asking for closing costs. She still wanted to ask for 50% of the closing costs, and our offer was not accepted. And it was a house that she really wanted. So this time, because there were others who were interested, we decided not to ask for closing costs.
Right. And I didn't ask my seller for closing cost because, like I told you, we bought it off the market. And we weren't friends, but my wife was friends with the wife of the seller, or the wife seller. You know what I'm talking about,
Mhm.
right? We were essentially buying it behind closed doors. It was not in the MLS. It was not actively marketed to anyone else. And my negotiation strategy, don't copy this, by the way, was at the end of the tour, I kind of gave my wife a glance, and it was kind of like, how much do you want not to show this to anyone else? Right? Which is a terrible negotiation strategy, by the way. Right? But had they said, had I said, well, I want $15,000 in closing costs and a 4-year home warranty and this and that and this and that, they're like, Bill, we're just going to put this home on the market and you're going to have to fight everyone else for it. Right? So if I wanted to buy it behind closed doors, I essentially had to give him a better offer than he would be likely to get if he were to put it on the market. Do you follow that? There's
Mhm.
virtually no incentive for him to sell it to me behind closed doors. So the
Exactly.
only way he should do that is if he thinks he's getting a better deal than he could get elsewhere.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean I didn't protect myself with an appraisal contingency and all that, but it means I wasn't going to be able to have my way. Throughout the whole process, I was pretty much getting beat up. Okay, I'd like this fixed. No. Okay, well, can I still have the house, please? Right?
Hey, hard pill to swallow, but you got your house.
Well,
So
I
that's
knew what
cool.
I was getting myself into. And when I'm an educated buyer, I can make educated decisions. When I don't know a squat, I can't make any educated decisions.
That is true.
Okay, I hope this has been helpful for everyone.
It has.
David, I hope you got a lot out of this. You were mighty quiet, but I hope you got a lot out, and hope everyone that watches this does too. I will see you tomorrow.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.